Thanksgiving, it's a day for family, food, and football, right? We picture happy pilgrims and Native Americans sharing a bountiful feast. A heartwarming story we learn as kids. But what if this picture-perfect Thanksgiving is more fiction than fact? What if this holiday, meant to symbolize unity and gratitude, has a much darker and more complicated history? For many Americans, Thanksgiving is a time for reflection and appreciation, but for others, it's a painful reminder of a brutal history that's often glossed over. It's time we update and reflect a more accurate and respectful understanding of the past. We need to acknowledge the real history of Thanksgiving, a history marked by colonization, disease, and violence inflicted upon indigenous peoples. Only by understanding the full story can we begin to move forward in a way that honors those who suffered and had to experience this tragedy. Let's unpack the truth behind Thanksgiving. The story goes like this. In 1621, pilgrims crossed the Atlantic fleeing from religious persecution, landing on Plymouth Rock. Soon after, with the help of friendly Native Americans, learned to survive in this new land, came together in harmony, grateful for the bounty of the harvest and the newfound friendship. They then shared in a feast with the Wampanoag tribe in Plymouth, Massachusetts. This event, often depicted in elementary school plays, is presented as the first Thanksgiving. It paints a picture of peaceful coexistence and cultural exchange. But, like most history, the real story is far more complicated. The truth is, the relationship between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag was much more complex than the Thanksgiving story suggests. In 2nd Esdras 13 verse 40 to 48 scripture speak on how those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Osea the king, whom Salmanasar, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters. And so came they into another land. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen, and go forth into a further country, where never mankind dwelt, that they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood, till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, and the same region is called Arsareth. After living in this uninhabited land for some time, the Wampanoag had endured devastating losses from disease brought over by Europeans. Their population had been decimated. The Pilgrims, seeking land and resources, formed an alliance with the Wampanoag leader Massasoit through an interpreter named Squanto, who was kidnapped 7 years prior to the diseases wiping out more than half of the Wampanoag population, who taught the Pilgrims how to plant crops, fish, and hunt. This alliance was partly to strengthen their position against other tribes like the Pequot tribe. 4. They also formed an alliance with the Narragansett and Mohegan tribes. The Pilgrims would later get Squanto to plot and try to get the other surrounding tribes to overthrow the Wampanoag tribe leader. But he got wind of it and ordered that Squanto be turned over to them for punishment, according to the treaty that was made between the Wampanoag leader and the Pilgrims. But the Pilgrim would not turn him over, thus breaking the treaty that was made during the so-called Thanksgiving feast. The feast, while a historical event, was not a celebration of peace and harmony. It was more likely a strategic gathering, signifying a temporary truce in a time of conflict and displacement, making them more like political allies. To present it as the foundation of a harmonious relationship is a distortion of the truth. During the Pequot War, after an Indian was sent to spy out the posture of the tribe, who, when he arrived, found them all asleep, a force from Connecticut colony, led by Captain John Mason and his native allies, came up about the break of day, set fire to the Pequot Fort, a settlement of the Pequot tribe that overlooked the Mystic River around 1637. Upon the massacre, they then set aside a day and held the first celebration 16 years later to give thanks to their gods for the killing of the surrounding tribes, including the Pequot tribe. It was not celebrated nationwide until 1863, when Abraham Lincoln declared it a national holiday during the Civil War in order to bring the countries together. Thanksgiving is really rooted in pagan origins and has nothing to do with Indians and Pilgrims. It is a religion observance to celebrate the completion of the harvest and to give thanks to pagan gods and goddesses like Ceres, the goddess of agriculture for Rome, who calls their Thanksgiving Cerealia. This harvest is observed by many countries, for they all have a Thanksgiving Day under different pagan names to celebrate it every year. This is why the Father said in Jeremiah 10 verse 2, "Learn not the ways of the heathen." He goes on to say in 2 Corinthians 6 verse 17, "Therefore go out from their midst, and be separate from them, and touch no unclean thing, then will I welcome you." Furthermore, he says in Revelation 18 verse 4, "Come out of her, my people, and be not partaker of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues." Section 4, the real cost of celebration, Native American perspectives. So for many Native Americans, Thanksgiving is not a celebration of unity. It's a reminder of colonization, the loss of their ancestral lands, and the systematic erasure of their cultures. This holiday often feels like a slap in the face to them, simply because this day symbolizes the celebration of their ancestors and families burning, being tortured, and suffering. The very act of celebrating Thanksgiving can be seen as perpetuating a harmful narrative. It's like having a party on the anniversary of a tragedy. It's insensitive at best, deeply offensive at worst. Section 5, a national day of mourning, Thanksgiving through indigenous eyes. Since 1970, some Native Americans have gathered in Plymouth on Thanksgiving Day for a national day of mourning. This day is a powerful act of remembrance and protest. It's a reminder that the arrival of the Pilgrims marked the beginning of centuries of oppression, violence, and forced assimilation for Native peoples. Their voices remind us that the true story of Thanksgiving is not a feel-good narrative. It's a story of survival, resilience, and the ongoing fight for recognition and justice. And this is why you shouldn't celebrate Thanksgiving, because it is a day of remembrance, a day of mourning for the tragedy that occurred on families, man, women, and children. If you like this video, hit that like and subscribe. If you feel like others should know, share this. And if you want, leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching. Peace and blessings.